Hello, I can't see you very well because the lights are all up there, but could I have a quick show of hands to see who we've got in the audience today? Are there school people here today? Are there university people here today? Are there tech vendors here? Right, who else is there? No? Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit today about technology and the role it has in schooling that relates to learning analytics, I guess. And the thing that really made me think very deeply last week was that I was at a conference in Moscow where there were leaders of 15 countries, all of whom are tech buyers. And they were trying to think to themselves, well, what do we want out of our technology? There was a remarkable consistency amongst these tech leaders in what they were worried about. They were worried about the curriculum because they felt, gosh, we used to have to teach the 3 R's, but now we have to teach the 4 C's and the multiple V's as well. 4 C's being collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, and the V's, values, attitudes and beliefs that are going to hold our societies and our economies together. So they were worried about that. They were worried about the challenge of expectations that are rising. It's no longer good enough to only educate our best and brightest. We have to make sure that every single child is lifted up to be able to thrive and work in our community. There was the challenge of pedagogy, because if we are teaching the 3 R's, the 4 C's, the multiple V's, it's probably not the best place to do it in a classroom where kids are lined up doing individual bookwork. So these people were thinking, well, how do we shift our education systems? How do we shift our schools? It was really interesting, the role that EduTECH played in their thinking. It was there, it was deeply there, but the interesting thing is that half of them, not half of each person, saw EdTech as the problem. Beware vendors with lovely boxes, I think was their general consensus. The other half of them, of each person, was that EdTech is also going to be a huge part of the solution. And the problem is to tell which is which. And I want to talk today a little bit about how you might tell which is which. Another way of putting that was, I was listening to one of the speakers this morning, and all of the speakers said, education's got to change, education's got to change, education's got to change. My challenge to the couple of EdTech vendors here is that EdTech's got to change, EdTech's got to change, EdTech's got to change too, because they've got to come together to solve the problems. And at the moment, there are just not sufficient EdTech solutions that are going to give us what we need. So what do we need? The first thing I want to talk about is the concept of clinical or evidence-based teaching. This is the approach that Melbourne University uses in its, when it trains teachers. And essentially, evidence-based teaching is based on this sort of understanding that in any domain of learning, and that doesn't matter whether it's maths or literacy or critical and creative thinking or innovation capacity, it doesn't matter what area of learning you think about, teachers work on the notion that there is a progression of learning, that students move along from having less capability in that particular domain to having more capability in that particular domain. And in that learning, they gather the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes, the values, the beliefs, that make up that domain. Now, if you're a clinical or evidence-based teacher, what you do is you try and place every learner on that continuum of learning in the domain and use that to think, I know what that student knows, I know where they're up to, I know exactly what to do for them to take them to the next stage. And in fact, in any given class, there are people, students at many different levels. So the clinical teacher puts a lot of effort to put the student on the continuum and work out what they can do, work out what they need and move them forward. Now, that sounds all very nice, but the teachers amongst you will know that it is very difficult to do. And what we need is EdTech in each area or domain that we try to teach that will enable teachers to quickly and easily place a student on a progression, work out what they need to do next so that they can make the next test in their development. At Melbourne Uni, we've been teaching clinical teaching or evidence-based teaching for about 8 years, and I have to say that we have found very few tech supports that will help teachers in this developmentally oriented, differentiated instruction. In fact, we've sort of been, we've had to develop our own, and over the last 10 years we've been working on some tools that can help teachers do that, tools that help them put students on a progression of collaborative problem solving, or literacy, or numeracy, or one of our favourites is a series of progressions that students with special needs can be placed on in terms of their social development and their emotional development, as well as their intellectual development. So I guess my question to any EdTech vendors in the room are, where is the technology that actually helps teachers with their core job, which is to find out where a student is in their development and move them on to the next space? Very rare, and if there are EdTech vendors who've got that, I'd love to hear about it today, because that would be fun. Now, the next challenge that I wanted to talk about is the challenge of supporting deep learning. Now, what do I mean by deep learning? If there's one thing we know about the modern environment, it's that every single one of us, including students, are going to have to learn all their life. There is no such thing as a bank of knowledge which will suit you for the rest of your life. Now, knowing that, we at Melbourne think that probably the most valuable thing you can teach a student is to know how to learn, right? If you know how to learn, you're set for life. And we actually started wondering, well, what is the progression of knowing how to learn? What does a learner who's not a very good learner do? And how does that distinguish a person who's a very good learner? What would this difference look like? And because we love progressions, because we're evidence-based, this is a summary of the progression we came up with for the skills that we think learners need. So at the lowest level, you've got people learners, kids, adults who consume content from experts, right? Up the other end, you've got people who are sceptical, critical, learn from wherever, learn from their colleagues, learn from the environment, learn from the web. They take risks, they produce things, they do things. They don't believe that knowledge is a static thing. They think that what you need to know today is not what you need to know tomorrow. They're forever questing in their learning. You can actually use this progression to place yourself along it. So I don't know where you'd place yourself if you think back to your last professional learning activity. How did you behave? Where were you on this continuum? If I had to guess, I would say that most of you who are pretty smart, educated people were probably at about level 3, because that's what our schools and our universities teach us to be. But now, that's not enough, is it? We need to shift all our learners up to level 5. And I guess my challenge to the EdTech people is, where are the software apps? Where are the tech things that are going to help us shift our learners from being at best at level 3 at the moment up to level 5? In fact, I might, when I look at EdTech applications that are there to support schools and learning, what I tend to see is things like LMS systems that deliver assessment tasks that individuals can do. I see, if they're very sophisticated, recommender engines that can tell kids precisely what to do next. I see intelligent tutors that actually the tutor is intelligent, but the child doesn't have to be, as they pick through it to learn some knowledge. I see analytics-based predictor systems. And all of those things, I don't think they're going to take my children, from level 3 to level 5. In fact, I worry that it will just take them further downstream to where they don't want to be. Now, I'm going to wrap up now, but I guess my message is that every time we pick an EdTech solution that goes to learning, I think we need to remember things like we want them at stage 5 reciprocal learner, and we want the ed technology to help them get there. We want to understand what their progression of learning is actually like, and we want to be able to place them on that progression so that we can move them forward without grades, without sense of failure, but just with a sense of progression as they move forward. And if the EdTech community could deliver those to us tomorrow, we will be very pleased. So thank you very much.